Well, good evening and thanks for joining us tonight here on News 20 on GTN. We've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about skilled and rehabilitation centers throughout the St. Louis area here. And joining me to my right, we have Charlotte Fink, the administrator for the Christian Care Home, and also Viola Weibel, the president of the board of the Christian Care Home. Glad you guys could join us here on the show. We appreciate your time. Let's first start off, and we talked about few things before we went on the air, but we talked about the difference now, even over the past 5 years, in terms of skilled and rehabilitation centers in almost the thought process of aging, of getting people into centers like this and really making that transition to move them back into their home. Have you seen a big difference in that?
Yeah, right now our primary focus is rehab, and all of our patients, when they come into the building, are assessed to see what their potential would be so that we can make a decision whether they go back home or that they'll be a long-term resident with us.
And we talked before we went on the air, in one of the brochures there was a great picture, and maybe we can talk about that specific person, not a name or anything, but that's a great story in terms of how we're trying to present this tonight.
Yes, we had a resident that came to us, and she was pretty much bedfast, nonverbal, and that was probably 3 months ago. She's been on intensive therapy, and she's now walking and talking, eating normal food, and we expect her to be discharged in a couple of months.
When you see success stories like this, and you've been involved with the organization for a long time, what's it make you feel like personally to see these people come, go through this, and then be able to move on?
It's a delight to even be there, working with these people, getting to see them socializing with fellow residents, and see them able to get up from a wheelchair, walk with a walker, cane, and be happy and social.
What would you say to people out there? Because there's a lot of people, maybe just a touch older than I am, that are dealing with issues of, do I put my parents in a support system? Do I keep them at home? Is it something that you just kind of know when it's time?
Well, you do, but always in the back of my mind, because I have elderly parents, and we're not looking at it as a permanent placement. We look at every resident and hopefully rehab that person to the point where they can go back home. But in the case that they can't, then we try to make the surroundings at Christian Care Home as home-like as possible and give them lots of choices. So,
a tremendous history to this home. Of course, it's a 501c3 status here in the state of Missouri, and it's owned by the Christian Women's Benevolent Association. Talk to us about the history, because this dates back 114 years.
Randy, I'd be happy to do that. We started in 1899 as a mother's and baby's home, and that continued for a while until 1903. There was a need for more extensive medical care. We first started in a rented house on Washington Avenue, 6600 Washington Avenue, and because of the medical needs of the mothers, this same group of dedicated women formed an organized Christian hospital. So that was a part of our ownership until in the 70s, when we sold our rights to the Christian hospital. And in 1911, we saw this group of dedicated, concerned women saw a need for more care for the elderly. At that time, it was organized for elder care. At one time, it was called Christian Old People's Home. That wasn't a very flattering name, so it wasn't long until it was changed to Christian Care Home. Now, the word Christian does not mean that we're there to preach to the people. It just happened to be the name Christian Women's Benevolent Association, so the name Christian attacked to Christian Care Home. And then in 1968, some of the funds from the sale of the Christian Hospital was used to buy 10.5 acres of land in Ferguson. That's where we located now, 800 Chambers Road. And a 4-story facility was erected there and was in operation until we saw some changes in federal and state requirements, at which time we decided, took us a year to decide, should we renovate or should we build? We decided after a year that we should build a 1-story facility housing a restorative or residential living on 1 floor. We have a dementia, Alzheimer's unit, and then our skilled nursing. And we're only the 2nd nursing home in the state of Missouri to have our in-house dialysis. And we have a wonderful, wonderful physical therapy rehab department. And residents are just so proud of their new home. We moved into our facility, the new 1-story, we have 90,000 square feet, in August 2010. That's when I became president of the board. That's where we are today, operating there. And we're happy to be there. And as Charlotte had said, we try to dress our facility. I told the board recently that we consider the building as a person, the grounds around it as her skirt. And so landscaping is also very important to present to people who want to come and maybe see about letting not place their people there, but letting them live in a home-like environment.
When you look at the goal and the mission, and we touched on it a little bit in the open as far as bringing people in, rehabilitating them, being able to move back home, move back to their own residence, how have you seen with your years in the industry things change? I guess that mindset through the years, through the past 10, 15, 20 years. Is that kind of the mission of the industry as a whole?
I think so. Back when I first became an administrator, and that was in 1978, you know, the idea was if somebody comes into the nursing home, and that's pretty much it. And but through the course of different regulations passing, and we have more Medicare options, and so we kind of changed that whole philosophy of the resident coming in here at the end of life. So now everybody's looked at to see if this is somebody that, you know, we can rehab and send them back out. Sometimes there's not the family support, so that person, if they come into our skilled facility, then we might transfer them to our residential living, which is less restrictive. And so, you know, it has changed, and I think it continues to do so, because the focus now is making everything home-like, lots of options for them, so that when they live there, you know, if you don't want this meal, you get a choice. That whole thing, giving them choices to make out their life.
It's such a gratifying experience to see. I have grandparents on my wife's side who live in a residential facility, and to see how much joy is brought to their life to be living amongst other older adults and having some freedom that they might not have had if they were in you know, a nursing center per se, or if they were at home by themselves and not being able to get out. It brings a lot of joy to them, and I really see that. Do you see that, how much of a difference that makes for people?
Absolutely. And we have a wonderful activities director who takes residents who can use their hands and helps them restore some function to the fingers, the hands. They get very involved with making some beautiful things in the craft room, and that's every day. And there are a lot of volunteers who come, oh, thank goodness for volunteers, who love the residents. We also have a chapel. The chapel doors are open, not just for we have a chaplain, but it's not just for our service. Different denominations can come in and use those services for singing, for encouragement, and residents often like to go in there and sit and just meditate and pray. And we have people who want to come in and play the organ and take requests from the residents. Oh, they get so involved with clapping and singing, and that's a wonderful thing. Now I want to talk about the area of dementia. We like to call that rather than Alzheimer's. It's a wonderful gated community. The residents are secured by wearing a bracelet. If they get close to the gate of the fence, it will lock. If they want to come out to any other of the areas, if they are not assisted by a caregiver, that door will lock. That's to prevent someone from getting hurt or wandering away. Now, they have their own dining room
Yes.
area too, and in their memory garden or memory walk, they have beautiful flower gardens, and they can go out, and if they want to pull up the flowers, okay. We take care of that, and we have benches and we have picnic benches because a lot of the family members want to come take someone out and have a little birthday party with them there. And there's bird feeders out there. Oh, and they don't hesitate to tell me those feeders need a little seed. and we enjoy doing that for them.
The one thing that I hear, whether it's with your organization or other ones, is that there's so much joy and passion where it seems like maybe over the past 20 years it was, I don't want to say a negative type atmosphere, but it was almost like a down type atmosphere. Grandparents on both my sides have been in skilled rehab centers, and when you walk in, like you mentioned, to different centers, it's joyous. There's music, they're clapping, they're involved in activities. Have you seen just a wide variance of how it affects residents to have those two ends of the spectrum?
You really need that socialization for them. And I had an elderly aunt that my cousin decided no, she did not want her mom to go to a skilled facility. And the situation changed, and eventually she had to because of her health problems. But she came in and she was so happy to be with people because she had felt isolated. And you have that a lot of times when, you know, the children may think, well, I'm trying to keep mom at home as long as I can, but in effect, they're isolated in their home. So once they get to the nursing home or to the rehab center, they're so happy to be with people and they make new friends. And we've seen that, you know, they make new friends and they're happy to be there, and there's activities. They go to the Muni, they go to the ballpark, to the ball games, Cardinal games. Big Cardinal fans, all of our people are. And we have special Cardinal days all the time, so.
As far as, you talked a little bit about Alzheimer's, and there's so many different other aspects. Do you think that over the years, as we learn more about these diseases and how to treat them, that specific care within the facilities has become more structured just for individual units? Like you have the Alzheimer's, where maybe before everybody's put together and you really didn't know how to work with them. Now it's really isolated.
Yeah, very much so. We have our, you know, our residential area, and then we have our dementia area. The other two areas pretty much are more skilled rehab for those residents. And then there's, of course, some that are just, they're going to be there probably the rest of their lives because either there's no family support at all, or they just can't make that, they just can't get the strength to be out on their own. So I can see that keeps changing. We say in our business that every day there's a change. we get a new regulation or a new focus. And so every year when we have a state survey, something different is stressed. So it's a constant changing profession, you know.
This was probably something I should have asked right at the beginning of the show, and I'll ask you now. And it's probably very confusing to a lot of people, including myself, but the difference between nursing home, skilled center, rehab center, is there a difference when you individually talk about all those?
Well, when you refer to the old nursing home, I mean, that's when you more like warehousing, I think. That's how I visualize it. Now, our facility, we get people from the hospital. Maybe they've had some sort of an incident where they need some real skilled nursing and some rehab. And most of our people come in that way. They come in from the hospital. They need that kind of little shot in the arm, you know, to get them back on their feet. And yes, it's a lot different than it was 20 years ago when I started in the business.
As an individual, what would you, I'll start with you, in terms of talking to a family, what would you say to a family about, this is a huge decision on where to put a family member, as far as going around, checking out different places, and making sure that you feel comfortable with where you're going to put your loved one. You wouldn't buy a car without shopping around. You know, it seems like a lot of people will spend more time on deciding what they're going to do for dinner or where they're going to go on vacation than really looking into and investigating and finding out all they can about a care center. What would you tell somebody about this important decision?
I'll tell you what we do at the Christian Care Home is we bring them in, let them tour the facility, let them sit down, and with our marketing lady, she explains to them what the role of the family member would be there, that it is not a prison, and there's all kinds of social activities for them. And being a one-story building, they can move around with their walkers, their canes, and their wheelchairs and get together in lounges. We have lounges with large screen TVs and fireplaces for them to meet and socialize, play cards, they play bingo, and
they read.
And they read.
Mm-hmm.
We have a nice library for them. We also have a beauty shop. They don't have to go out. And those things are pointed out to the people. And it makes them feel more comfortable. And then also, they usually bring them around to meet with Charlotte, and they see that she's a sweet and gentle person. And I get to meet with them too, and they seem to identify with someone who's a little older and who is there and cares for them. Now, I want to tell you something else that's very interesting. Back to the Mothers and Babies Home, we have people now who come through St. Louis who were in the Mothers and Babies Home. We have a couple now who live in South Carolina who was recently in our facility, was admitted to our facility with his mother and his siblings. When he was 13 months old, he lived there until I believe he was 15. And they were going through the area, so they stopped and visited. And we're doing a feature story on our newsletter about him. He said his father had died when he was just a baby. And they had nowhere to go except to the Mothers and Babies Home. It had saved his life. It encouraged him to become a businessman. We have another gentleman who recently came to our facility who was with us for 4 years. And he's now director of a children's home. And he thanked us for taking care of him and his 2 sisters. And then we had a young man who was 21 when we were building our new facility. He was working in the construction. And he said, "This saved me from drugs and alcohol." So we hear success stories. We hear people coming back again and visiting with us. And we're finding the original photographs of when they were babies, and they love that.
It's got to make you feel proud
Yeah.
to, lay your head on the pillow at night and know that what you're doing on a daily basis is really changing people's lives. And sometimes you don't really realize it at the moment. It might take 10, 15, 20 years
That's right.
for somebody to come back and say, hey, you really changed my life and pointed me in the positive direction. Make you feel great?
Yes. We also, we have our staff, and we hire people, and sometimes they're in desperate situations, and they have a job and they're getting a paycheck. We have about 170 staff members, and that's a considerable crew to keep on track. But the same thing is true with them. We have people there that have worked for a Christian care home over 40 years. And that's amazing. I've never been in a facility that had that kind of longevity in our staff.
Have you seen the mindset of individuals all ages, whether they're in their 40s like myself or even in their 30s or 20s or even teenagers, change towards older individuals in this world now? It seems like people are a little more caring, and they realize that older individuals are a very precious commodity.
Somewhat. I mean, there's still some of those people out there that think once you're past 70, that's it, We see those too, but I will have to tell you, most of our staff members are great, and they're caring, and every now and then you get a bad one. You never know, but those are weeded out, and for the most part, we have good nurses and good CNAs. So it's a pleasure to be their boss.
One of the most pleasurable experiences I get to do every year is be part of the Miss Senior Missouri pageant. Mm-hmm. And for the last 8, 9, 10 years, I've been a judge. This year, I'm going to MC the event. And it's always amazing to me. I am blown away by the time I get to spend with the rest of the judges sitting and talking to the ladies in the pageant. And they range from 60 to 85, 90 years old. And every single one you can learn something from, whether it's about marriage, whether it's about life, whether it's about your job, whatever it is. Everybody has a story. Do you find that you get caught up in just sitting and maybe listening and talking to individuals?
When our residents come in, we do a history with each resident. And I love reading those because, you find we had one gentleman that used to play for the Cardinals, and we had a lady, she is now deceased, but she had worked in the South picking cotton, and came up here to St. Louis and had her family, but she was cleaning railroad cars up here to support her family. Now this is way back, but it's amazing to read those stories and how these people survived, because back then there was no Medicaid, and people were on their own. But they survived, and they had such positive outlooks. It's amazing to see.
One of the most amazing things that I've learned through that is technology, how it's changed. That people, at a certain time span, didn't have, of course, cell phones and all that kind of stuff. But to hear where they were at to where they are now, and to see people who have maybe never touched a computer until they're 60, 70 years old, and now they're fascinated and they know how to use them just as good as a youngster. Have you seen that technology trend maybe change a lot of people's life? Being able to connect people again?
It's starting. We have one resident right now in the facility that has her own computer, and she's always emailing, and she's giving me all these lessons about things she's learned, so she's a cutie. But we're seeing more of that.
As we start to kind of bring the interview to a close today, what would you want everybody out there to know about the mindset and the feeling of skilled and rehabilitation centers are different now than maybe it was 10 or 15 years ago? What would you want people to know?
I would like for everyone to realize that they have a right to talk to someone if they have a concern of something that's going on, if they would like to make a suggestion for an improvement. They don't have to be afraid to talk to someone. And if they can't find someone right at that time, to ask for them. And we are more than willing to go sit with them. For instance, I was just in the dementia area in their memory garden. Some folks were sitting there, a lady and a couple of men, and I sat down and we talked. And it was interesting to hear what the lady had to say and compared backgrounds. And so I would like for them to realize that they are very free to move about, to ask questions, to make themselves more comfortable.
And Charlotte, what would you say to everybody out there about that mindset of skilled and rehabilitation centers, how it's changed, and what they can expect if a family member needs to be placed in one?
Well, we're going to do all in our power to get that person back on their feet. And sometimes in the case of the dementia resident, you're limited to what you can do. But we have a wonderful staff. They work with them, and we're going to try to get them to their very highest potential.
Ladies, we'd like to thank you very much for being on the show. Today, once again, we are talking about nursing homes and skilled and rehabilitation centers and what you can expect if a parent needs or a grandparent needs to go into one, or maybe yourself. We appreciate your time here on the show,
You're
both
welcome.
ladies from the Christian Care Home. And for any more information, you can simply contact the care home. We'd like to thank you for joining us here on the show tonight. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow night right here on News 20.